All right, guys. So thank you so much for coming on to my channel. It's Sarah at carnivore.yogi and on Instagram. And I've got a really special guest with me today. Her name is River. And I feel like I started following you like right about the time that I was really getting into carnivore. You were putting your stuff out there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what an absolutely fascinating story. And so it's been cool to kind of see your transformation over this last like year plus. So
Yeah,
it's cool to actually get to connect and like chat live.
yeah.
But yeah, just introduce yourself to everybody. Let's start back in the beginning, like how things were before you kind of found carnivore and started allowing yourself to eat animal foods.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I do feel like you're one of the like OG people that I remember when I started this Instagram account to connect with other people on a similar journey as me. And like your name, Carnivore Yogi, I was immediately like, oh my God, I'm a yogi too. And all these other yogis are like, you have to not eat meat to be a yogi and all this stuff. And I just fell in love with you immediately and I never stopped loving you. So to answer your question, I guess I was a vegan, a long-term vegan for about 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. And my partner was vegan, and we had two children, like on a vegan diet. And man, it hurts my heart a little bit when I say that. I do feel like a little bit guilty now that I know what I know. But my children are beautiful and they're healthy and they're so intelligent, and I know that everything happens for a reason. So my partner and I really started this whole vegan diet as an approach to pursue health and better our health and better ourselves. And, we felt like we were doing what was right for the planet and right for our body. And it's really sad because when we went down that path, we really became alienated from a lot of our friends and a lot of our family members. And it was such a slow progress, like slow procession of the alienation that it didn't seem like it was related to veganism at all. But when you take a step back and you see it, like it really had a lot to do with it. Um, but yeah, so let's see. I went through my first pregnancy as mostly as a vegetarian because I still included a lot of like raw dairy and eggs, and I just had access to all this fresh like farm food. And so my first baby, I gained a ton of weight. I gained like 30 pounds my first
Oh,
pregnancy.
that's nothing, girl.
Oh
30,
my gosh, it
that's
felt like it
nothing.
for me. I was 21. I was used to being like this young little nimble thing, and then all of a sudden I had a belly and a big butt. But um, it was awesome. My baby was like a fat little fat roll, and she was just so sweet. And I had amazing pregnancy. Like I discovered yoga during my first pregnancy, and that's when I really started diving into, like medicine is movement kind of stuff. Movement is medicine, and it was awesome. But so I lost my train of thought here.
Pregnancy, vegetarianism, healthy
Yes.
baby.
Um, yeah. Oh, my pregnancy was awesome. It was just natural because I was like in this vegan mindset, vegetarian, whatever, at the time. I didn't want any medication. I didn't want any of that stuff. So I had an awesome birth. I had like a natural, unassisted birth. We didn't even have a midwife. And like, I just felt so empowered in my own knowing that like this is how our ancestors gave birth to children for years and years and years. And I really carried a lot of strength through that. And so I had beautiful pregnancies, both of them. My second pregnancy, I had been vegan about 3 or 4 years by the time that pregnancy started. And I gained like no weight. I
Mhm.
was ultra skinny, like, and I was kind of proud of it. Like, it's kind of disgusting when I look back on it. Like, it's sad, but I thought that that was healthy. I thought that that was like how it should be. And yeah, I gave birth to this sweet little baby that was like 4.5 pounds, and it scared the
Oh,
freaking crap out of me. It was scary. Like, my birth was beautiful. My baby was like, she had no medical problems, no health issues, other than she was super small and she was full term. But like, that was, I think, the biggest thing that shook me out of this, like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be.
mm,
And so I really started like questioning a lot of my beliefs at that time. And that's such a special time for you and your family when you give birth. And, you know, it's such a, for women, it's such a time that we're like enveloped in ourself and in our love for our children. And so it was a weird time to go through that kind of like change of religion at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I think that was really what shook me, and it shook me that that I was so skinny. I couldn't like go for runs. I didn't have like energy to do things. I was super lethargic and just like I didn't feel healthy. I thought I looked healthy. I really don't think I did now. I think I looked unhealthy, but I thought I looked healthy then, but I didn't feel healthy. And I knew that I needed to figure that out, you know? And it took some time. Like it was a process for me. It wasn't like overnight, you know, like maybe we like, what did we do? I think we started eating eggs and, we felt better, but then we believed that we were just like addicted or something, you know, like there was still a lot of mind
This
trip.
dogma that goes with the whole vegan thing is so crazy. You get these beliefs and you're like, oh, this is how it is and like how it's supposed to be and it's natural and uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah. So it took a little while, and we were living in Costa Rica at the time. We were surrounded by other vegans, like
Yeah.
people who lived on fruit and people who just, you know, they really put the message out there every single day. That's their lifestyle. And so to really shift from that was very difficult. It was like a loss of ego, a loss of self, because that's what we had kind of built ourselves around. Um, Yeah, but we ended up moving back to Utah, and I remember like I had developed major anxiety and depression, and I'm thinking like my life is amazing. I do whatever I want all the time. I travel, like I work online. I had created a lot of perfect situations. I had a beautiful family, but I was depressed, and I was like, "What? How could I be so sad?" You know? I didn't know why I was sad, and I didn't know why I felt so anxious. Like I remember thinking, I must have anxiety because I'm in my 20s and I live in Costa Rica and I don't really have to do anything but hang out all the time. And like, that's probably why I feel like this sense of anxiousness, you know, like there was always,
Cool.
yeah, right. I know, like I should have been like enjoying it to the fullest, but something was off and it was just my neurochemistry, you know, but I didn't know that. And so when we moved back to Utah and we started including a lot of animal products, a lot of things changed for me. I remember I went to the grocery store and I bought salmon. I bought like a wild caught salmon at Whole Foods, and like I felt so strange inside myself, like going up to the counter and asking for it. And the guy gives it to me with the biggest smile on his face. He's like the happiest guy ever. And he says, I really hope you enjoy this. And I'm thinking, he has no idea like what I'm going through right now, you know? But I smiled and I took it home and I really did enjoy it. And like we made salmon with butter and broccoli with butter. And we like didn't give a crap about the broccoli by the time we had eaten the salmon. And I just felt like so satiated and satisfied. And I remember sitting down on the floor to play with my kids after I'd eaten, and all the anxiety that I had been feeling for years like just melted, like it just went away. And I was filled with this sense of peace, and I'm thinking like, where did that come from? Like I didn't just yoga or meditate or like do something to stimulate that, you know? And I started to really realize how much the food stuff had affected me, and that like kind of lit a fire. And within a week I was pretty much full on carnivore, like I'm going to explore this, you know?
Yeah. How did you guys get to that point where you're like, okay, let's try animal products? You know, what had to take place for you guys to get to that point?
You know, I mean, like I said, there was kind of progressions. Like I feel like there were little things that would wake us up,
Mhm.
but something else would bring us back, you know, and that happened a couple of times. But a couple of the things that woke us up were one friend of ours who was like, had been in the same kind of like vegan, live on fruit, do your life this way, had, you know, woken up and realized you need protein, and you can get it from insects, and you can do it in all these ways that like might fit your beliefs. And he was trying to help us with that. And like, he told us about eggs and stuff. And so I remember there was that, and we kind of explored based on somebody else's recommendation, and we felt better, but we also didn't feel that great because we would include eggs and then still eat like so much tropical fruit and like the sugars mixing with the fats and stuff, like we just didn't feel good. So it was confusing, right? Like we didn't fully understand how to transition to animal foods or incorporate animal foods because that was never taught in the vegan religion, right? Like that was Satanism. So yeah, I remember that guy who kind of helped us with that. And then there was this movie called The Queen of the Trees that we watched, which is a really awesome documentary. It's on YouTube, I think.
Okay.
And it's about like, it's kind of arguing that humans became human through like fig trees and through consuming these fig trees. And the figs are full of insects. And so these humans who were like, or early humans supposedly, who were hunting fruits or whatever, started getting all this protein from the insects, and it like was a piece of their evolution. I don't know how true any of that is, but at the time I was like, that makes sense to me. You know, like we do need protein, we need these things. So there were little things like that along the way. And then I think the biggest thing that was like the last of it was when we were living in Costa Rica. I was completely depressed, anxious, and had psoriasis. I've had psoriasis since I was like 17, and I was 24, 25 at the time. So I like, you know, it had been a long battle, and I thought that through vegan I would get rid of that.
Yeah.
It really never did. It would kind of come and go, and then like it just came and was so uncomfortable. And I remember thinking like, I need to detox more, or I'm doing it wrong, or whatever it is. I had all of this like stupid programming, and my partner was always looking for ways to help me. And he found like Zero Carb Zen, the Meat Heals website, Michaela Peterson's story about her autoimmune condition and healing it with beef, salt, and water. And this was at the point where we had kind of decided we need to leave Costa Rica. Like, we're not doing well here right now. Our house, like, all the places that we kept moving into were moldy and just like struggle after struggle, you know? And so we decided that we were going to go back. And I think it was like one of our last days there. And he tells me about Michaela Peterson's story. And I'm like, there's no freaking way somebody like cured all of their problems with red meat and salt and water. Like, there's no freaking way. But it was so like beyond what my mind could believe that I wanted to know more. Like it was polarizing. Like we're talking about your name, like something that shocked me so much that I was like, that almost makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that was really it. There were a few other like accounts. What's this guy's name? Svadia, the crazy German. Crazy German YouTuber guy. Like his stuff was so radical. Like that really radical stuff is what shook me and pushed me, you know. And like, I don't think that stuff's for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. Like, but it worked for me, and it really, really did shift me. And I'm so freaking grateful. Like my whole life is a million times better now. Complete turnaround.
Awesome. So how did you go from like, let's eat some salmon to just full on carnivore? How did that work out?
You know, everything else just became less and less interesting.
Yeah.
And like, I remember I decided, well, I'm going to do something like paleo because carnivore's too extreme. And I just came out of veganism and I don't want another eating disorder. When I came out of veganism, I was like, that was an eating disorder. I was messed up, and that took over my life and like made me crazy. And so I was very adamant that that was not going to happen to me again, and that like I would never do something as extreme and all this stuff. And so I was very anti-carnivore, like mentally. I was like, there's no way I want to go there. But everything else just wasn't interesting. And I just felt so good when I was feeding myself with these like super nutrient dense, sacred animal foods. And I think that was part of the process for me coming now, you know, full circle a few years later. Well, I think only like maybe 2 years later it's been. But, you know, other things are interesting now, which we can talk about later. But then I think I really was just so depleted and had lost all lean muscle mass, and I needed to rebuild and restore. And that was like the perfect way for me to do it. And, you know, it felt good. And once I decided, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna try it. Like, I felt the effects pretty immediately, and it was awesome. It was all I ever needed. Was the proof in the pudding, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you struggle with like feeling guilty at all during that process of kind of switching over?
Um, you know what? I didn't because I had gone through those little waves at like towards the end of the vegan thing. I already gone through guilt and came back and gone through guilt and came back. And I think when I that last, step that I made, I just went full force into it and I just like started to understand differently like cycles of life and having total respect for like okay, so when I was a vegan, I thought I loved animals. I thought I was like this animal lover person. But whenever they were around me, I actually kind of hated them. Like I hated the way they smelled and I didn't want them to get near me because they would get me dirty or like I didn't want dog hair on me, like things like that. Like when we would house sit for my partner's mom, we would like take care of her animals. She had a homestead and like I didn't like feeding the chickens and these things. I just like I kind of got grossed out by
Mm.
real life, like real smells and things like that were just difficult for me. And when
Mm.
I started eating meat again and consuming animals, like all of a sudden, like I just want to love on every creature I see. And like I felt this deeper connection and ability to connect with animals that I think I had lost, but I didn't realize I had lost it.
Wow.
It's so weird. I don't know. I feel like that might be a little bit less common, but it definitely happened to me.
It's fascinating. How did your kids do through the transition? Were they resistant to eating meat after kind of being raised vegan?
Right,
Like,
brainwashed.
yeah, exactly.
That's an awesome question. So I think we're really lucky because I've talked to a lot of other parents that have had a really hard time with the transition. But my daughter, so I have two daughters, and um, the first one was so young, like she was still on breast milk when I
Mm.
transitioned. So there was no, like, she had no idea. But the other one was about 3, maybe 4. And, she had been raised vegetarian. We had, like, basically programmed her, right? We'd given
Yeah.
her all these reasons as to why this is the
Oh, yeah.
best way to eat and stuff. And we thought we were doing what was best. But when we transitioned, she loved butter. The second we gave her butter, she freaking loved butter. She didn't like fish, but we made bacon, and she loved bacon. And I think the first thing that we gave her that wasn't vegan was goat cheese. We
Mm.
gave her this goat cheese and she like went crazy for it and would not stop asking for it. And like her dad started explaining to her, like this is the fruit of the goat. Like this is the goat's fruits. And like
Mm.
this is actually really good for you. And like whatever mom and dad said before, like wasn't really correct and we were wrong. And like this is gonna make you feel better, make you smarter and stronger. And she was super receptive to all that stuff. And she loved the taste and the flavor and stuff. So it didn't really bother her at all. And she liked bacon. And like one of the only things that we could get her to eat, or like the only thing that she would ever eat or ask for was bacon cheeseburger. But it was just like burger, patty, bacon, cheese. And like I felt good giving her these foods.
Yeah.
And like, so her health issues, she looked like a totally healthy kid to me when we were vegan, except that she had bags under her eyes, which I
Mm.
couldn't figure out. And she had this big, like, beer gut.
Yeah.
I thought she had parasites. Like I went through a thing with parasites. Like I literally passed them and saw them leave my body. And I was like, oh my God, that's what my kid has. And we had like been living back and forth between Utah and Costa Rica. And I'm like, we just got parasites in Costa Rica or something. And I'm trying to like cleanse this poor little girl. Like, I gotta like dose you with a bunch of garlic or whatever it was
Yeah.
to try to help her gut. But it was just like inflammation, bloat, indigestion, and that's because her body couldn't process all the vegetable and fruit matter and stuff. And
Yeah.
so when we transitioned to carnivore, uh, her belly bloat went away. She had like warts on her knees; they went away,
Oh, wow.
and the bags under her eyes. But I think that was really her only like conditions that I could see. And yeah, I mean, oh, what's another thing? She had a stutter. She would
Huh?
stutter, but it was like it would come and go, and I thought it was related to like technology. Like I would notice if she watched movies, she would stutter after that, and like I think it really came down to something else food related because that went away too.
Wow.
Just little things like that. And so she was too young to see other things like, I know parents talk about like kids having ADD and stuff like that. Like I didn't see any of that in her, but they're thriving now. She loves she loves the idea of like getting to go out and try to hunt with dad someday and stuff like that. Like she's really into this ancestral way, you know? So it's pretty cool. I feel lucky about that for sure.
That's really cool. That's crazy you mentioned like the big bloated belly. Like my daughter, we just switched her over to keto like 2 months ago now. And she's always had that big bloated belly because she loved fruit. We had her mostly like paleo, which I would watch the kid eat like 2 bananas in a row and like 3 apples and like just loved the fruit, loved the fruit more than anything, but loved dates and anything to get her hands on. So now that we have her off of that, and she's kind of primarily not really like on purpose, just it's more her leading the charge, moving more towards eating carnivore. Her stomach is flat for the first time. Like she'll be 13 in December, but ever since I can remember, she's had this big bloated belly. And I'm like, I just thought, well, that's just an autism.
It's just kids. Oh, really?
Yeah, because a lot of kids with autism, you see it. You see their bellies are big and bloated because a lot of them have gut issues.
Yeah.
It's like a big problem with autism is like the gut brain thing. And so I thought, well, it's just the gut issues. It's just part of the deal. But now that she's been keto and now moving more towards carnivore, it's like she has a flat stomach for the first time in her whole life. So that's crazy. That's like the first thing that you notice with your daughter of like, yeah. And I think a lot of people think that the kid, for kids, like for them to have kind of a pot belly or whatever is just
people
like,
think it's normal.
Right. It's totally not.
And like maybe to an extent, because even like I'll see even like breastfed babies, granted, I don't know what the mom is eating, but I will see that like come and go.
Yeah.
So maybe as like our digestion develops, those things kind of are, I don't know. But I know that you shouldn't look like you drank a bunch of beer when you're 4 every single day. So like, yeah.
Yeah, for her, it would be like she'd wake up in the morning and she'd have a flat stomach, but by the time she had had a couple meals, it'd be back. And I'm like,
yes,
just so bizarre. Yeah, but we pathologize so many things, I think, just like you were saying with the whole vegan thing, and like we just kind of sweep things under the rug and pathologize and try to turn that part of our mind off that's like, let's do some critical thinking. You're like, no, like I have to do it this way.
It's hard for us to question our own beliefs because that takes you like you're attacking your own ego at that point.
Yeah.
It's not a conscious thing. Like you're not like, oh, I'm consciously attacking my ego and I'm not going to let that happen.
Right.
But it's one of those things where your subconscious is like, oh, just think about that later,
Yeah. That's like the whole yoga and veganism or vegetarianism thing. I'm like, question that. Like, let's question that. Like, where did that come from? And why are we holding fast to it? Because like when I was vegan, I was like horribly, horribly underweight, had no muscle tone, didn't feel good, was tired a lot. I thought I looked great though. So it's like funny when you're in that and you're like, I look great. And I look back at pictures now and I'm like, oh no, you did not look good.
I know.
Like a size 00 on somebody who's like almost 5'8" is just like not okay. Yeah.
It was as well. And it's like, I should be larger, like, yeah. Man. I love this act of nonviolence around the animal stuff because it's like, I think, especially if you are supporting like regenerative farming and like, grass-fed, grass-finished, you're doing less harm to the animals than the vegan supporting monocrop culture. Like,
exactly.
It's crazy. So if you're so disconnected from your food, you have no idea what harm you're doing or not doing. It's when you get really connected to your food, your farmer, you are your farmer, or whatever it is for you, even if it's just, the local butcher and you trust the source or whatever, like that's what brings you into understanding the cycle and whether you're supporting something that you really feel comfortable supporting or if it's just something that has a pretty label,
Right. With veganism and a lot of these products that are out there, they're made out of like almonds or they're almond flour. And I don't think a lot of people are truly educated. They're just like sitting at surface level. I don't think they're truly educated on the environmental damage of those products. They just have, no idea. Like, not only is it like monocropping, or if you're doing almonds, it's almond farming, like what that's doing to the environment, how many incidental, deaths are from those. Like, it just, I don't think people really know. I don't think they really understand, or if they do, they're just kind of like picking and choosing, um, what part of their food chain they're a part of, because they are, whether they want to realize it or not. But they're thinking of like a lesser, like, I'm at this part of the food chain, and that somehow makes me better or more, morally superior. And it's like,
Yes.
you're not really educated on what kind of environmental damage you're doing, and how many like lives are actually being lost from that, packaged little vegan dessert that you're eating, that you buy 20 of a week. And like, it's, yeah, it's sad. um
Arthur Haynes, who's an author and a writer, a botanist, and a like homesteading hunter-gatherer community guy, wrote this awesome book, and he talks about that, like the vegetarian mindset, and he talks about how it creates what he called speciesism. So,
mm,
like, as a vegetarian, you believe that there's basically hierarchies of species, and like, I don't think they would come right out and say, humans are at the top, but that's what they believe. And then they believe that, like, like animals with eyes and animals that show, like, like your dog or whatever, or monkeys are also up there. But these littler animals, like, say, ants or insects, are lower on this chain of speciesism that they have, where, like, it's okay if the rodent gets killed, but I would never eat this cow that's on my, sister's
right,
plate, whatever. And
right.
it's just like, it's a mindset thing, and it doesn't make any sense, like, this is a world of energy where everybody contributes, every animal, plant, everything is contributing to this global energy. And for you to believe, or for one to believe, that they're somehow higher, or that somebody else is somehow higher, just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't at all. It really doesn't. But yeah, I'm a big believer in, attraction and not promotion. And so it's like, you just have to live your life, do your best, and for us, kind of putting ourselves out there online, on Instagram, it's like, I'm just sharing what I'm doing, and I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody,
No way.
or do it my way, or you're wrong. It's just like, this is what I've chosen to do. I feel good about it. Whenever I learn something new, it's like, learn, and then you know better, and you do better, and you just grow,
Mhm.
um, from that. It's kind of like when we were both vegan. It's like, we were doing what we thought was the best thing at the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
we really, truly. I mean, I truly believed that that was like it. Uh,
Yeah.
and you get so caught in that mindset that you're like, you ignore stuff when you're not feeling good, and when you're like so grossly underweight, or you having a baby that was like so tiny. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute, like.
Yeah. Might not be right about this,
Right. Yeah.
like, yeah, that's something I've been thinking about recently, is like, throughout that path, all the beliefs and understandings I had were given to me by somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, my own experience didn't match up to what I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And that should have been, a big red flag, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, like, so you were carnivore, like pretty strictly animal foods for a while, and kind of, where are you at now with your journey with the whole animal-based foods eating?
yeah, so I did follow carnivore pretty strict for about a year. And then I started running into like little problems. Like, I went on oh, sorry, I'm losing myself in I went on a road trip, and I basically was like living on ground beef from my cooler, and like coffee from wherever, and like I was enjoying myself, but I started having all of this histamine issues. I
Yes.
was like,
Beef.
what the hell? Like, I'm not histamine intolerant. I'm not
Yeah.
histamine sensitive. Like, I'm a freaking carnivore. I'm a lion. Like, this is my diet. But I didn't really, like, I was like, okay, well, I know coffee's not good for me. I have an autoimmune condition to begin with. So that's kind of one of those little vices,
Yeah.
that I would dabble in and out of, but at that time was dabbling in of. And, the ground beef I know probably is not good to begin with. Like, all the other pieces nobody wants ground up into whatever. And then
Yeah.
it's sitting in my cooler for how many ever days,
Oh
and
yeah,
so
that's
all
a
this.
major recipe for histamine. Major.
Yes, yes. And I just felt freaking horrible when I got back from my trip. And like the only way that I got myself out of it was just like letting go of all food, anything. And I don't even remember what I started eating, but probably like rice or sweet potatoes, I think. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But I just started like, what can I do to try to include other things and not have this problem? Because it was really tough. And I
Mhm.
was somebody who loved bone broth and all these things that just like all of a sudden my histamine bucket was overflowing and I
Yep.
couldn't handle it. Um, so yeah, I went through that and started kind of trying to experiment with different things. When I did start including carbs, I noticed like, oh my God, I feel so freaking good. Like I felt that rush of energy, my workouts improved, different things, but it all came with a consequence. Like what was the downside of that? Maybe my digestion was sluggish or I started getting bloating or like, maybe I got acne when I included dairy, which always happens even if it's raw.
Yeah.
And so like I've always just kind of been experimenting throughout carnivore, which things work and don't work as well. And then I started experimenting with like which plants work for me and don't work for me, which ones like are so good that I don't care what else happens, and that kind of stuff. But um, so that's been kind of a process over the past couple months. And right now I'm feeling pretty good. The histamine issue went away.
Well, that's good.
Um, yeah, I can talk about some like strategies I had for that, but
Yeah.
right now where I'm at is I take fruits every other day. Like I'm kind of falling in the cyclical keto kind of approach. So I do one day like pretty heavy fat, like, bone marrow, eggs, bacon, ribeye, that kind of stuff. And I won't take carbs that day.
Mhm.
And then the next day I'll do a little bit more like leaner protein, whether I do fish that day or like leaner cuts of steak. And I'll eat fruits in the morning. And I freaking love fruit. Like that is my like ultra amazing. This is so good. And God gave this to me, like for
Yeah.
me to enjoy. And I do well with it. I know some people have blood sugar issues and stuff like that. That doesn't really happen to me. So that works well for me. Carbs and other sources don't work as well. Like sweet potatoes are out. Any sort of vegetables just don't work well with me. I
Yeah.
can do, I tried rice and I was trying to figure out how do I make rice work because this is awesome. It's cheap.
Yeah.
Like, it could work
Not
really
like
well.
carb.
But the only way I found it to work is not cheap, and I have to use wild rice, which
Uh,
is expensive, and I have to soak it for 24 hours before I even cook it. And it works, but then it's like it's expensive and it's kind of a process. So I maybe have wild rice like, I don't know, once a week or something, if
mhm.
that. I'm
Yeah.
way more into this like really fruit thing, and I just feel like the animal foods are mostly what I want, and I think
Yeah.
everything else becomes kind of a treat.
Yeah.
So,
And you're like are you pretty physically active or
yeah.
yeah.
So I do a pretty tough CrossFit workout at least 3 times a week,
Okay, yeah.
sometimes more. And for a while there, I was doing them every day, but I've kind of stepped away from that. And I practice yoga every day and I walk. I probably walk about 20,000 steps every day.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, I think you can get away with the fruit. And I think
Oh, yeah.
it's just like is benign. I mean, my goal is to eventually get avocado back in with the histamine stuff. So I'd love to hear how you kind of got rid of those histamine issues.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of nose to tail.
Mm,
Uh, I love the idea of like use the entire animal. I love the idea of like supports like.
mm,
And so um, the way that I really solved a lot of the histamine issues was to, get rid of bone broth for a while and, get rid of ground beef for a while and really only buy fresh stuff. I didn't buy anything frozen.
mm.
So the way I understand histamine, I'm not an expert, but you basically have kind of what I would consider a bucket
Yep.
and you can take so much histamine and some of it should come out. But
Yep.
some people have histamine intolerance or their histamine health is poor and their bucket just fills and fills and fills. And then you start having like allergic reaction symptoms. You get runny nose, you get rashes, you get tired. For me, if I get a histamine overload, like if I tried to go to barbecue and eat smoked ribs,
Oh
I
yeah.
really like want to pass out and die afterwards. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
just stuff like that I can't do. But
Yeah.
I can take bone broth now. I can do ground beef if I want to. I'm not that into it. But there's definitely levels for me. Um, but the two organs that super helped with the histamine are kidney and thymus.
Yep.
And kidney tastes downright disgusting.
Do it. I can't do
It's
it.
so freaking gross.
I
And
love thymus though. I
thymus is awesome.
delicious. Yeah, we eat that a lot around
Just
here.
a fat little treat.
So good.
But I did, full disclaimer, I do work for this company, but all of that aside, like I found this company because I was taking their products and they're freaking amazing, and it's Ancestral Supplements and they have a kidney product.
Yes, it's in my
And
fridge right now.
yes, it is so good. So anyone watching this with histamine issues, you can take 1 or 2 capsules of kidney before your meals,
Mhm.
like 10 to 15 minutes, and it acts as like a DAO enzyme. But it's also even better because it's supporting your own histamine health. So
Mhm.
it's helping your body to like androgynously create DAO,
Yeah.
which is freaking awesome. So that like kidney and thymus became my like go-to for a while I was dealing with all of that, and it really helped, you know.
Mm.
It really, really helped. And I think if I did want to go to barbecue with my friends, I'd probably take like 15 kidney capsules before just to see if I could get away with it. But,
Yeah.
you know, like, I don't know. It's interesting when you start learning your body and you have the tools, you
Mhm.
can kind of mess around like that a little bit, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing because my daughter has really severe histamine issues, and so for her, we do kidney and thymus. I deep fry thymus now in
So
Iberico pork
good.
fat, and it's like eating candy. It's crazy. Even my husband, who's like terrified of organ meats, he'll eat the thymus. So I just get it
And
like,
bacon.
oh yeah, chop it
Yeah,
up, deep fry it, and then everybody eats it, and it's like I've already noticed a difference with her because
that's
usually
awesome.
she has a crazy runny nose during this time of year, and she's already like, I haven't seen her nose run even once this year. So that's been awesome.
Wow.
And then we all
Amazing.
kidneys. Yeah,
All these things that people believe like, oh, that's just how my body works. I just get a runny nose at this time of year. But it's like, you don't have to go through that. Like, you
exactly.
know, there's an answer.
Exactly. It's so empowering, and that's
Mhm.
cool. So awesome you work for Ancestral Supplements. I mean, I recommend their products to people all the time because
Awesome.
they're just, I mean, I can't get my daughter to eat liver either. So she does
Yeah.
liver, she takes kidney and thymus. And I just feel better because she's still kind of picky about what she eats, like,
Yeah.
but she'll at least eat meat now, which is awesome. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I shove those pills down my kid's throat like
Yep.
crazy.
Yep. My daughter had to swallow pills, and so we're good.
Yes, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, working for them has seriously like it's such a huge part of my journey, and it's
Yeah.
really helped me to understand a lot of, you know, I think what I was going through in my mind, like it gave me the knowledge and the education to feel really confident about what I'm doing and how I'm taking care of my kids right now and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's been amazing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, anything exciting that you're working on right now or projects or
Well, yeah, kind of. So on Friday, I've been living in Texas for a year, working for this wonderful company that we just spent a few minutes talking about. And on Friday, my partner and my family and I are taking a extended trip back to Utah, and we're going to learn a lot of like primitive life skills, which has been something that's been on my bucket list forever. So that'll be really, really cool. I've been really diving into like the making of crafts with my hands and including, you know, animals into that process, which has been really cool. So I'm excited to learn stuff like tanning hide and things like that. And my partner's learning to hunt, and so it's kind of like this deep dive into primitive lifestyle. So that'll be really cool. And then other than that, like personal projects, I feel like I've just really tried to reconnect with my art. Um, and so whether that looks like making random crafts or writing poems or, you know, drawing or whatever, I feel like that's been my personal kind of exploration that I'm going through right now, which has been really freaking awesome.
very
Uh,
cool.
yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, how can people find you if they want to connect with you or follow you?
Pretty much just my Instagram. I don't have any other outlets, but my Instagram is at ancestral.awakening. And yeah, that started really as a food journey and has kind of transitioned into this like primal flow through whatever it is I feel like I'm doing, but it's pretty cool.
I love it. I mean, it's like a lot of us got here, to the community through food and through like being malnourished, and then it just evolves. I'm
Hmm.
seeing we have to break out of the dogma of like, carnivore, because you can get stuck in like that dogma, just like you can get stuck in the dogma of like vegan,
Yes,
so it can go both ways.
totally.
So I think it's really cool to see someone, who I've pretty much followed from the beginning, like you've regained your health and you continue to evolve on the journey. And it's cool, it's inspiring.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for being willing to come on and share your story. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. So
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. That was fun.
yeah, lots of fun. Cool. All right. Well, you guys know where to find her. I'll tag her in the video below so you can go check her out on Instagram. But thanks again, River, for coming on and chatting.
You're welcome.